I'm Paul Mitchell. I'm chairman of the Harris Partnership. I'm an architect, do lots of different types of commercial projects. I'm based in Wakefield, live in Leeds, and do a lot of my work around the area. How did I get involved in it? That's interesting. I actually sent Mike an email saying, you need me as your architect. I know what Mike is like. I'd heard tales about him, so I thought the best way of dealing with him was actually send him a cheeky email and see what response I got. Interestingly enough, I did get a good response and a request for a meeting, which I tipped my PA off that Mike was the sort of guy who would want somebody immediately there. So I turned up the following day and we seemed to get on. Mike is interesting, a completely different client to any other client I've ever worked with. Very focused on what he wants out of a project, to the extent that he has actually dictated quite a lot of the concept of the scheme. And from that point of view, it's a challenge for me to actually get him to keep on track in terms of actually getting the building built. He's very hands-on on design items. He's got certain fixed views. He's got an idea that he wants to work with his feng shui master in terms of the design, which brings a whole new input into the scheme, which I've never come across before, and I don't think many people have. I became an architect because I'm interested in art and history, and it was an ideal subject to move forward with in terms of had a technical element to it, and I'm also interested in maths, so those three subjects were my A-level subjects, and by that point I was decided architecture would be the ideal route to move forward. Interestingly enough, my careers master told me that I had no chance of becoming an architect at all, and I should go for something else a little bit easier. My father was an architectural technician for a while, so had all the architectural tools and the drawing board and all that sort of thing, so I was quite interested in what he'd done in the past, albeit he wasn't an architectural technician when I left home, but it certainly sort of slightly influenced the direction, but it was more to do with the fact that I like buildings and I like travelling and things like that as well. It's always a rush to start with. Can you come up with some ideas quickly so we can move it forward? And that's also part of the excitement, is that you're under tight deadlines, constraints. I work better under constraints. If I'm given too long, nothing will happen. And I actually set my own constraints quite often on projects to say, well, I'll get you something back by next week, and set a date and make sure it's there by then. We, as a practice, encourage school children from the local grammar school to come in here. I'm a great believer in training people up, so we're always taking on year-out students, training them all the way through. Most of my staff have come out of training programs through the business itself, so a lot of them have anyway. The challenges are going to be to keep Mike on track and actually get him to make decisions on things that actually move the project forward. We're already experiencing that on quite a lot of levels, in that he'll decide on something one day and then 2 weeks later the decision changes completely. That is not how you design a building. You need to have some forward movement, and that's not always the case.